Sarah perched on the edge of the worn leather couch, her hands trembling as she adjusted the photo frame on the coffee table for the third time that morning. Her husband, Greg, would be home in an hour, as predictable as the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. That hour had become the most bittersweet 60 minutes of her day. "Mom, why do you keep doing this?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. At 19, he was old enough to understand the complexity of life, yet young enough to resent the cracks in its veneer. Sarah turned to face her son, her hazel eyes shadowed with a mixture of guilt and resolve. "Jake, I didn't ask for this. It just happened." Jake scoffed, pacing the room. "You didn't ask for it, but you chose it. Dad deserves better." Her stomach churned. She had heard those words from her conscience countless times, yet hearing them from her son was a deeper cut. It had started innocently enough. Sarah met Mark 6 months ago at a charity gala Greg had urged her to attend on his behalf. Greg, ever the workaholic, had sent her as his proxy while he finalized a major deal. She had hated these events, but Mark made it bearable. Mark was everything Greg wasn't: spontaneous, charming, and attentive. Over champagne and laughter they had connected, their conversation flowing as if they had known each other forever. It wasn't supposed to go beyond that night. But then there were texts, then coffee, then dinners that stretched into midnight confessions. Sarah felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, her mundane life suddenly punctuated by bursts of color and passion. But infidelity wasn't just about stolen moments. It was the lies, the planning, the guilt that gnawed at her when she looked at Greg across the dinner table or listened to Jake talk about his college aspirations. Jake had stumbled upon her secret by accident. Home early from a canceled lecture, he found Sarah laughing with Mark in the kitchen. They weren't touching, but the way they looked at each other said everything. "Who's this?" Jake asked, his voice tight. Sarah had stammered, searching for a plausible lie, but Mark had been honest. "I'm a friend of your mom's," he said, his tone steady, but his face pale. Jake's world tilted. His mom, the woman who had held their family together, was betraying his dad. He had stormed out, but the confrontation had come later, a raw and angry exchange where Jake demanded answers Sarah didn't know how to give. Now, weeks later, they were locked in this uneasy truce. Jake hadn't told Greg, but his disapproval hung in the air like a storm cloud. "Do you love him?" Jake asked now, breaking the silence. Sarah hesitated. The truth was as complicated as the situation itself. "I love your dad," she said slowly. "But with Mark, it's different. It's not about replacing your father. It's about finding a part of myself I thought was gone." Jake shook his head, his face a mix of anger and sadness. "You're justifying it. You're risking everything for what? A thrill." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "It's not a thrill, Jake. It's more than that. But you're right. I've put everything on the line and I don't know how to fix it." When Greg came home that evening, the house was immaculate, dinner was on the table, and Sarah greeted him with a smile that barely concealed her inner turmoil. Jake watched from the sidelines, his heart heavy. Secrets had a way of unraveling, and Jake knew it was only a matter of time before this one did. He loved his mom but hated what she had done. He loved his dad and feared what this would do to him. As the family sat down to eat, Sarah caught Jake's eye. It was a silent plea for understanding, for patience, for time. Jake looked away, unsure if he could grant her that. The clock ticked on, each moment bringing them closer to an inevitable reckoning.